Drowning in data, yeah, we all feel that way sometimes. But today's deep dive, we're looking at how the Air Force is tackling that challenge head on.
And we're not talking about some old filing cabinet solution here. We're diving into the DAF API reference architecture, their playbook for a data-driven future.
Their playbook, their blueprint, and get this, they're actually using it.
No dusty shelf for this one. And it's about way more than just managing data. We're talking agility, responsiveness, getting the right intel to the right people right when they need it.
Exactly. And they're not messing around. We've even got a quote here from the Air Force CTO talking about a data-centric force ready for anything.
Yeah.
But before we go full throttle.
Yeah, let's set the stage a bit.
We keep throwing around this term API, and I'm sure you're all familiar, but just for clarity, it's how different systems talk to each other, like how your phone gets info from different apps.
Think about it, the Air Force. They've got tons of systems, tons of data. What happens when those systems can't communicate?
Oh, man.
We're talking intel stuck, decisions delayed, worst case missions fail. This document, this is about prevention, making those systems work together seamlessly.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. And that's where this API-first approach comes in. It's not just a tech upgrade. It's a fundamental shift in how they think about data, its potential.
And how to unlock it, right?
Absolutely. And one of the most interesting things here is how they're addressing the challenges. They're not just saying, let's use APIs. They're laying out a whole architecture for how to do it securely, efficiently, at scale.
And that's what we're going to unpack today, this architecture, the why behind it, what it means for the future.
Not just for the Air Force, but for anyone who relies on seamless data. And in this world, that's everyone.
No doubt about it. So we've got the why, this need for seamless data in the Air Force, but how do they actually do it? That's where this document gets really interesting. It lays out this blueprint, this DAF API reference architecture. And one of the key things they talk about is this API catalog. But what's the strategic thinking there? Sounds like something out of a library, honestly.
It's a good analogy. It really is like a centralized menu for all the data and services within the Air Force. So say you're building a new application and you need to access, real-time weather data.
Critical for a lot of missions, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. Instead of everyone building their own connections from scratch, they go to this catalog. See if a reliable, secure API for weather data already exists.
So it's about efficiency, preventing redundancy, but also making sure everyone's working with the same trusted data, right?
Exactly. Streamlines everything. Less room for error makes the whole data ecosystem more robust.
And speaking of robust, we can't forget security. The document talks about API gateways, which sound pretty important.
Oh, absolutely. Security is paramount here, especially when you're talking about sensitive military data.
No kidding.
So the API gateway, think of it like the guard at the gate, making sure only authorized personnel can access the data.
Okay, makes sense.
And this is where that whole zero trust concept comes in. It's not just verifying your identity once, it's continuous. Every request is checked and authorized.
So even if someone gets past the initial security, the gateway's there like, hold on, are you really supposed to be seeing this?
Exactly. And it gets even more granular than that. The document even talks about handling different security clearance levels, which you can imagine adds another layer of complexity.
Oh, for sure. This is the Air Force. We're not talking about open source everything here. They've got to protect some of the most sensitive information imaginable.
Right. So how do you make sure someone with a secret clearance doesn't accidentally stumble onto top secret info while browsing for an API?
Yeah, how do you manage that in this API-driven world?
It's a combination of things. Technical solutions, obviously, but also really robust policies. They're talking about controlling access down to the data field level.
Wow. So not just who can access the API, but what specific information within that API they can see.
Exactly. It's pretty impressive.
That's what I'm talking about. This is where it gets really interesting. They're not just throwing APIs at the problem and hoping for the best. They're thinking about the entire life cycle of the data. Creation, access, security, all within this API-first framework.
They've really thought this through.
But it makes you wonder, how do developers actually build applications with all this going on? It can't be as simple as, plugging in a USB drive.
Well, you're right. It's a bit more complicated than that. But the document addresses this too. They talk about SDKs, software development kits.
SDKs.
These are basically like pre-built tools and libraries that make it easier for developers to use these APIs.
So instead of writing code from scratch every time, they've got these building blocks to work with.
Exactly. It speeds up development, reduces the learning curve, and makes sure everything is consistent across different applications.
Which is, let's be honest, absolutely crucial when we're talking about something as critical as military data sharing. We've covered a lot of ground here. The why, the how of the Air Force's whole API-first approach.
It's a pretty amazing roadmap they've put together in this document.
It really is. But you know me, I always want to know, so what? What does this actually look like in action? How does this help the Air Force in the real world?
Okay, so imagine this. A pilot needs real-time intel on a target.
Time-sensitive situation.
Absolutely. With this API approach, instead of waiting for someone to, manually pull that information.
Could be hours.
Exactly. They could have it right there in the cockpit in seconds.
Okay, now that's the kind of impact that really matters.
Right. And it goes even further than just speed. Think about predictive maintenance. Sensors on aircraft constantly sending data back through those APIs.
Instead of just waiting until the next scheduled check.
Exactly. They could spot a potential issue before it even becomes a problem.
Preventative rather than reactive.
Exactly. And don't forget about collaboration. Seamlessly sharing data with allies, partners during a joint mission.
Everyone on the same page with the same real-time intel.
That's what it's all about.
Now we're talking about a true force multiplier, right? Not just better tech, but better coordination.
Absolutely. And the document's honest about the challenges, too. They know they need to keep developing, make sure this is scalable, resilient as things grow. But I was really struck by, and I think this is so important for everyone listening, they're asking for feedback.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that.
This isn't just them saying, here's how it's going to be. They want to hear from developers, from the end users. They recognize that the best solutions come from working together.
So anyone listening who thought, APIs, that's just for the techies, I hope this has opened your eyes a little.
This is about strategic advantage, solving complex problems, building a more responsive future.
And it's a future we can all learn from, whether you're in the military or not. This API-driven world, it's here to stay. The choices being made today, they're going to echo for years to come. So understanding why those choices are being made, it matters.
It really does.
And as always, we encourage you to check out the document yourself. Share your thoughts, stay engaged, because in the end, we all have a stake in this.